Saturday night felt like a dream I'd worked too hard to perfect. Laughter drifted through the house like perfume, light, warm, and rehearsed. I moved from guest to guest, my smile automatic, my dress catching the glow of the chandeliers. The music hummed softly under the sound of clinking glasses. Everyone kept saying how perfect everything was, how Mark and I looked so happy. If only appearances could talk, they'd probably lie too. I was by the bar when Chloe leaned in, her voice slicing through the music like a whisper that shouldn't exist. "You're strong, Carol," she said, her eyes soft but uneasy. "I don't think I could put up with what he does." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. My laughter froze halfway, my throat dry as dust. The air thickened, the party blurred. My heart started asking questions my mind didn't want to answer. What he does," I managed to say, blinking hard. Chloe bit her lip, looking toward Mark, standing across the room, all charm and polish, his hand resting on Vanessa's arm. "Forget I said that," she whispered quickly, eyes full of guilt. But I couldn't. "No, Chloe," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What do you mean?" In that silence before she spoke, something inside me cracked. Not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but enough that I did. Chloe hesitated, her glass trembling just slightly, catching the light like it had a secret of its own. "You didn't hear it from me, okay? But people talk. He's not as faithful as you think." Her words landed softly but cut deep, like silk hiding a blade. I forced a smile, nodding as if she'd just complimented my dress. Inside, my stomach turned. It was the kind of twist that no amount of wine could smooth out. I turned to look at him. Mark, my husband. The man who once swore that I was his only truth. He was laughing, head tilted back, eyes sparkling at something Vanessa said. She reached out, touching his arm in that careless, intimate way that told me this wasn't new. The room erupted in laughter again, but I could barely hear it. Every sound felt like it was echoing from a tunnel miles away from where I stood. I excused myself, pretending I needed to check on the food, but really I just needed to breathe. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, staring at nothing. My reflection in the window looked foreign, like someone playing the role of the happy wife. My chest ached with that strange mix of anger and humiliation. And the worst part wasn't Chloe's words. It was the question that followed, uninvited and cruel. Was everyone seeing it but me? I returned to the living room, every smile now feeling rehearsed, every laugh rehearsed twice. Mark noticed me and lifted his glass from across the room. That familiar grin plastered on his face, the one that used to make me melt. I smiled back because that's what good wives do. But in my head, I was rewinding every late night, every vague explanation, every, "you're imagining things." Suddenly, all those harmless details didn't look so harmless anymore. The night dragged on, each song a little too loud, each joke a little too forced. People saw what they wanted to see, a perfect couple hosting a perfect night. No one saw the storm quietly building under my skin. I caught Chloe's eyes once or twice. She looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't blame her. I just wished she hadn't been the one to peel back the curtain, because once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. When the last guest left and silence finally took over the house, I stood there in the middle of the living room, surrounded by half-empty glasses and fake laughter still echoing in my ears. Mark called from upstairs, asking if I was coming to bed. I said yes, though my voice barely made it past my lips. But sleep? That was gone. Because something inside me had shifted, and it wasn't going back. The next morning, the house felt too quiet, like it knew something I didn't want to say out loud. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, too bright, too honest. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup, watching Mark move around like nothing had changed. He hummed while he made coffee, the same tune he always did when he felt proud of himself. I wanted to believe that hum meant peace, but after last night it just sounded smug. He looked up and smiled. "Morning, beautiful," he said, sliding a cup toward me. That easy confidence in his voice used to comfort me. Now it made my skin tighten. I forced a smile. You and Vanessa seemed close last night, I said, trying to sound casual, almost teasing. His hands froze for a fraction of a second, before he laughed. We worked together. We were talking about a project. He said it so easily it almost felt rehearsed. Must have been an important one, I said lightly, my eyes not leaving his. You were practically whispering in her ear. He chuckled, but it was nervous, shallow. You're jealous? That's cute. Cute. That word hit like an insult dressed in charm. My smile dropped. I'm serious, Mark. His face hardened instantly. You always overthink things. That's your problem. He leaned down, kissed my forehead, and left for work. The sound of the door closing felt heavier than usual, like a warning I didn't yet understand. I stayed by the window long after his car disappeared, the steam from my coffee fading as quickly as my patience. The silence pressed against me, thick and knowing. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something just to hear the crash. But I didn't. Instead, I drummed my fingers on the table, a rhythm of control, of defiance. He thought I'd swallow his lies like I always did. He really didn't know me at all. The rest of the morning slipped by in fragments, dishes clinking, the clock ticking too loudly, my own reflection following me from room to room. Every corner of the house felt different now, like it had absorbed the truth I was still trying to digest. The pictures on the walls, vacations, anniversaries, fake perfection, stared back like witnesses. I realized I'd built my life on a version of Mark that might never have existed. I went upstairs and opened his closet. Everything was neatly arranged, ties by color, shirts ironed crisp, that faint scent of his cologne hanging in the air. It used to comfort me. Now it just mocked me. I touched one of his jackets and wondered how many times it had brushed against her. The thought made me pull my hand back fast, like it burned. I closed the door quietly, but inside, something was already waking up. A colder, sharper version of me. By afternoon, the house felt like a stranger's. Every sound echoed, the refrigerator hum, the wind brushing against the windows, the faint ticking of the clock marking each second of my disbelief. I tried distracting myself, folding laundry that didn't need folding, rearranging flowers already perfect. But no matter what I did, Chloe's words replayed in my head. He's not as faithful as you think. They looped like a curse I couldn't shake off. That night I made dinner the same way I always did, out of habit, not hunger. When Mark came home, he kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, like we were still the couple everyone envied. He talked about his project, his meetings, the new restaurant he wanted to try next weekend. I nodded, smiled, even laughed once or twice. It was easier that way, to act normal while I studied him like a stranger pretending to be my husband. When he finally went upstairs, I sat alone at the table, the untouched food cold on my plate. I could feel my pulse steadying, not in panic, but in resolve. Maybe he thought I'd let this go. Maybe he believed I'd keep playing the role of the trusting wife. But he was wrong. As the house grew quiet again, I whispered to myself, not a threat, not yet, just a promise. If he thinks I'm imagining things, I'll show him how real I can be. The following week moved in slow motion, like time itself was testing me. I watched Mark closely, not obsessively, just enough to catch the small things he thought I'd miss. The late-night calls, the quick text replies, the sudden urge to work late. Even his scent had changed. Not cologne exactly, but something softer, floral, unfamiliar. Every detail painted the same ugly picture, one brushstroke at a time. And I was done pretending not to see it. One night, when his breathing finally evened out beside me, I reached for his phone. My hands were steady, surprisingly so. Maybe because, deep down, I already knew what I was about to find. I opened the messages and saw the name V. The thread was full of hearts, of secret plans, of lies whispered through screens. V. Last night was perfect. Miss you already. Mark. Soon, my love. She's clueless. Clueless. That word stung harder than any confession could. I sat there in the dim light, staring at the glow of betrayal on his screen. My hands shook, not from heartbreak, from clarity. Every illusion I'd been holding on to dissolved right there in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't wake him. I just took screenshots, each one like a quiet act of justice. Then I sent them all to my personal email. For the first time in a long time, I felt awake, like I'd finally opened my eyes. The next morning, Mark kissed me goodbye as usual, smelling of expensive cologne and guilt. I smiled back, careful not to let him see the shift behind my eyes. The moment the door closed, I opened my laptop and pulled up the screenshots. The words looked even uglier in daylight. Soon, my love. She's clueless. I almost laughed, not out of humor, out of disbelief that this was the man I'd built my life around, the man I'd defended. By afternoon, I texted Chloe and asked to meet for coffee. I needed to look her in the eye, to see if pity was hiding behind her apology. The cafe was warm and quiet, the smell of roasted beans wrapping around us like a blanket that couldn't quite comfort me. She arrived nervous, fiddling with her scarf. "Carol," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I thought you already knew." I sipped my coffee slowly, letting her words sit between us like ashes. "Oh, I know now," I said finally, my voice steady. "And I have a plan." Chloe's eyes widened, but she didn't ask. Maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe she already guessed. Because my tone wasn't vengeful. Not yet. It was something colder, something calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've stopped begging for honesty and started preparing for exposure. I smiled, not out of joy, but out of control. He wanted a secret. I'll give him an audience. That night, I watched him sleep again. His breathing was calm, his face almost peaceful, like guilt had never touched him. I wondered how someone could lie so easily and still rest so soundly. I studied his hands, the same ones that used to hold mine with devotion, now symbols of deceit. Every inhale he took was a reminder that he still believed he was winning, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt power. Over the next few days, I played the role perfectly, the loving wife, the unknowing fool. I asked about his day, cooked his favorite meals, even kissed him goodbye. He smiled, relaxed, certain his little world was intact. But behind that smile, I was memorizing every detail, rehearsing every word for the moment it would all crumble. The sweetest revenge, I realized, isn't loud, it's patient, it's precise. It's the moment they realize you've known all along. Each night, I went to bed beside him, but slept beside the truth. The screenshot sat safe in my email, a quiet weapon waiting for its cue. I didn't rush. I wanted the reveal to feel theatrical, poetic even. If he wanted to make me look like a fool in front of everyone, I'd let everyone see exactly who the real fool was. And as I closed my eyes that night, I smiled. Because soon, very soon, he'd learn that I never play the same game twice. When Vanessa's invitation arrived, I almost laughed. The nerve. A party. Her party. And of course, Mark insisted we go. "It'll look weird if we don't," he said, pretending it was about appearances. I agreed easily, smiling like it didn't burn. Inside, I was already planning every detail. What I'd wear, what I'd say, when I'd finally let the truth breathe. Revenge doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it only needs precision. The night of the party, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. My reflection stared back like someone I hadn't met before, composed, elegant, untouchable. I wore red, not out of vanity, but symbolism, the color of passion, yes, but also of warning. When Mark saw me, he froze for half a second before regaining his practiced charm. "You look stunning," he said. I smiled. I know. I wanted him to feel proud, just for a little longer. The moment we walked into Vanessa's house, I could sense the tension hiding under the music and laughter. She greeted us with that same bright, guilty smile, her perfume heavy enough to choke honesty. Mark played his part flawlessly, shaking hands, telling jokes, pretending not to look at her too long. But I noticed every glance, every spark they thought they'd hidden. And as I sipped my drink, I realized the night wasn't just theirs. It was mine. The room glittered with laughter and music, but underneath it all, I could hear the truth humming like static. Vanessa and Mark tried to act casual, stealing glances when they thought no one noticed. I watched him pour her a drink, his hand brushing hers. A brief touch, too deliberate to be innocent. My chest tightened, but not from pain. From anticipation. Every lie he'd ever told was about to find its echo, and I'd be the one holding the microphone. As the night unfolded, I played my part with grace. I laughed at jokes, made small talk, and danced with Mark once, just once, to make sure every eye saw us. He looked relieved, even smug, like the crisis had passed. Poor man. He had no idea he was dancing at his own funeral, the social kind, the one where reputation dies slowly, under applause and whispers. I smiled into his shoulder, memorizing the irony of it all. When the music softened for the next toast, I felt my pulse steady. Vanessa clinked her glass, thanking everyone for coming. People turned toward her, smiling politely. And then I stood, calmly, gracefully. The crowd shifted, attention snapping my way. "I'd like to make a toast too," I said, my voice smooth, warm, even friendly. Mark looked confused. "To honesty," I continued, lifting my glass, "to love, and to knowing when to stop pretending." The room went still. You could almost hear the confusion ripple through the air. Mark frowned, glass halfway to his lips. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd worn 1,000 times before, only now it meant something entirely different. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "Before we toast," I said softly, "let's hear a few words from the man of the hour." A few chuckles. They thought I was joking. I wasn't. I connected my phone to the speaker system, the same one Mark had praised earlier for its crystal clear sound. Then I hit play. His own voice filled the room, distorted only slightly by the text-to-speech app I'd programmed. "Soon, my love, she's clueless. Last night was perfect. Miss you already." Each word echoed like a hammer in slow motion. Conversations died. Glasses froze midair. And Mark. He just stared, his face draining of everything that made him charming. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. "Carol, stop," she whispered, trembling. Mark turned toward me, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" I lifted my glass, calm as ever. "Just you, Mark," I said softly. Speaking from the heart. Gasps filled the air. Sharp, heavy, unforgettable. I set my glass down gently and walked toward the door. My heels clicked against the floor like punctuation marks. Behind me, the perfect illusion crumbled. And for once, I didn't look back. The next morning, the house was silent. No music, no laughter, just the hum of what was left. I woke up alone, though I wasn't sure if Mark had even come home. I didn't care enough to check. The sunlight crept across the kitchen floor, and I made coffee the same way he used to. Black, no sugar. It tasted bitter, but honest. Outside, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, apologies wrapped in panic. I didn't answer any of them. By noon, the whispers had already spread. Friends pretending to check in just to see how I was. Coworkers texting me things like, "You didn't deserve that." Even Vanessa's name popped up once, an unknown number begging me to talk. I smiled at that. They all wanted my reaction, the spectacle after the explosion. But there was no explosion left in me. Just a strange, satisfying quiet, the kind that follows truth finally spoken aloud. That evening, I sat by the window, sipping wine, watching the sun dip low behind the trees. I thought of how many nights I'd waited by the same window for Mark to come home, convincing myself love was patience. It wasn't. It was self-erasure. He'd mistaken my silence for weakness, my loyalty for blindness. But last night, I taught him something new. Silence can be the sharpest weapon of all, and mine cut clean. By the second day, he finally called. His name flashed across my phone again and again until I picked up, not out of curiosity, but closure. "You've humiliated me, Carol," he snapped the moment I answered. His voice shook, not with guilt, but with fear of exposure. I waited, listening to the man who'd once controlled every conversation struggle to find his footing. "I only repeated your words," I said quietly. "You did the rest." He tried to soften his tone then, slipping into the voice that used to make me forgive too easily. "Please, we can fix this," he pleaded. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "No, Mark," I said, calm as breath. "You fix broken things. You destroyed this." There was a silence on the other end, the kind that feels like the end of a chapter. He muttered something I couldn't make out, then hung up. The click sounded final, exactly as I wanted it. The next morning, I drove to my lawyer's office. The pen felt steady in my hand as I signed the papers. Divorce, division, the undoing of a life built on illusion. Half of everything. The house, the savings, the life he thought he owned. When I walked out, the sky was a soft gray, cool and open. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel wrong. I just felt free. Beautifully. Terrifyingly free. The days that followed felt strange. Quiet in a way that used to scare me, now comforting. I slept through the night without checking if the other side of the bed was warm. I cooked for one and actually tasted the food. I listened to music without wondering if the lyrics applied to me. Little by little, I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's attention. Freedom, it turns out, doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, sits beside you, and says, "You're home." I started spending time with people who made me laugh. Real laughter, not the kind that hides exhaustion. Some called me brave. Others said they couldn't believe I'd done what I did. But courage doesn't always feel like strength. Sometimes it feels like shaking hands, signing your name on papers that end a chapter of your life. Sometimes it's standing in a room full of people and choosing the truth over comfort. That's what I did. I chose myself. One evening, I drove by Vanessa's neighborhood. Not to gloat, just to remind myself that I'd survived the fire I didn't start. Her lights were off. His car was gone. Maybe their fairy tale burned faster than they expected. I smiled softly, not out of spite, but closure. Because the truth is, revenge was never about hurting him. It was about setting myself free. And as I drove home, windows down, the night air felt lighter, like the world was finally mine again. Months later, I found myself at another party. Different house, different laughter, a different woman standing in my shoes. This time, I wasn't hosting or pretending. I was simply living. The air was warm, the music soft, the kind that lets you breathe. I wore a simple dress, no need to impress anyone. I caught my reflection in the glass of champagne I was holding and almost didn't recognize her. The woman who'd stopped apologizing for her own strength. As the night went on, I noticed two women whispering nearby. Normally, I would have looked away, but something about their tone caught my ear. "That's Carol," one of them murmured, her eyes flicking toward me. "The one who exposed her cheating husband." The other smiled, lowering her voice. "She's incredible. I wish I had her courage." I turned slightly, meeting their eyes for a brief second, not to shame them, but to remind them that courage doesn't need permission. Their words lingered like music, not gossip, not pity, but admiration. I smiled to myself, remembering Chloe's voice from that night so long ago. "You're strong, Carol. I don't think I could put up with what he does." Back then, they pitied that strength, saw it as endurance. Now they envy it. And as I raised my glass to no one in particular, I thought, I didn't just survive what everyone already knew. I rewrote the story they'll never forget.